There's a drive way back. It might be. It could be. It is. Holy cow. Welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Thank you so much to our awesome sponsors, Wrigleyville Sports, the best sports store in Wrigleyville, and Yaggy Road Roasting Company, based in Valparaiso, Indiana, serving cups of coffee just as special as the moments you drink them in. Here's your host, Jeff Candid Cubs Rogowskis and Pat Erickson. Hey, Cub fans.
What's up?
Bricks Behind the Ivy. This is our massive glow up. As you can tell, we have had just a slight upgrade in our media package and being able to go live in front of all of you. So this is super exciting for myself, super exciting for Pat. And, what is a new studio like?
A new pair of underwear, At first it's constrictive, but after a while it becomes a part of you.
So if you've watched Bricks Behind the Ivy before, you know how much I love to A, reference Wayne's World, B, use clips from Wayne's World, and C, that is possibly my favorite movie. I even have little tiny Wayne. And
Excellent. All right.
A little tiny Garth at my desk
kind of coincidence
at all times.
5 minutes for me is Aurora, Illinois, so maybe I'll go get you some donuts from Stan Nikita's.
If they have the sugar pucks, I hear they're excellent.
Yes, there you go.
Anywho, let's get to our regular content. This is kind of a live show, so if you have questions, comments, feel free wherever you're watching on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching right now. Feel free to leave us a comment. Maybe we'll put your comment up on the show. Maybe we'll answer your question. So thank you so much for watching. But yeah, just wanted to go over a few things. This will drop tomorrow in audio form. And yeah, Pat, you were at Cubs convention this weekend. If you were listening to the Bleacher Bunch episode this week, was not, because everybody here got COVID. So I did not get to go to the Cubs convention and make just a buttload of content like I had planned on doing. I ended up having to stay home and take care of sick kids and survive.
Wow. I'm glad you're doing better. I'm glad you're doing better, and watching all of these things. I mean, with the convention this year, it was great to see the alumni. It was great to see the whole gang back together again, and watching a lot of it on marquee and everything else, and seeing the new guys there and everything was great. The one thing that did stand out, and I'm sure Cub Nation will agree with both Jeff and I, is due to, and we'll get to it later in the podcast, but due to some recent comments by our commandant, Tom Ricketts, he was lit up like a Christmas tree, and rightfully so. And like I said, we're going to get into that here in a little bit, but the greatest thing about the whole convention, it was a convention itself, but to know that, coming here pretty soon in about a month, pitchers and catchers are going to report. We're actually the first team in Major League Baseball where pitchers and catchers report. So it's coming, folks. We just got to battle with this cold snap we're in right now, but it's coming.
Yeah, I believe they're allowed to officially gather sooner just because they are going to Japan to play that really extremely early opening series out in Japan versus the just okay to not very well built team, the Dodgers. My lord, the Dodgers continue to get richer, and at the dismay of the Cubs today, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yep.
So, Pat, you got to spend Saturday at CubsCon spreading the good word that is Bricks Behind the Ivy and having some of your own fun as well. What were the highs of CubsCon? Did you feel the energy?
Seeing all the guys there, seeing all the fans, reconnecting with a lot of the the traditional fans that were there, seeing a lot of the young faces there, just being a part of all of it, and it was good to see. All the guys. I mean, to see Sandberg there. I mean, and you all know how crazy I am about Rhino. And the fact that he still knows me by name is kind of scary. So my friends from college think I have a restraining order on him, and probably rightfully so. We got that. Yeah. But so there's that. And then to see Sammy running out with the flag, kind of bringing back all the feelings from after 9/11 and everything else. I think it was good to kind of get him back in the fold. I know it was a long process to get him back here. I know Stu over at Club 400 has said a few times, on Club 400's podcast that it took at least 3 years for it to happen. So it was kind of good to see him kind of come back and to do all the fold there. But, like I said, it was just the whole thing. It was just a great thing, everybody back together. And like the convention, like listening to it on the radio, like seeing it on marquee all weekend long, it kind of gives, and maybe this and Jeff, you probably fall in the same boat. It gives you the traditional hope springs eternal, and I was watching something the other day. The CEO of Circa Sports already predicted the Cubs can win the division.
Oh, wow.
I believe it was 86 or 87 wins. They said that the Brewers kind of fell off with their losses and lack of acquisitions, et cetera. And then so on down the line. So they picked the Cubs to win the division. I see it, but I don't. And maybe, who knows, maybe it's just the rest of the division isn't kind of competing up with it. So, so we'll see, and the other thing, and just as a quick side note, first of all, Nick, how are you? He's down in Georgia watching live right now. So spread the word down there. But as a quick side note, it's baseball related, but not Cubs related. The other big story of the weekend was the passing of Bob Uecker.
Yes,
I know that, he's the dreaded Milwaukee Brewers at Wrigleyville North up there, but Bob was the epitome of baseball. Me growing up, it was Harry, Jack Brickhouse, and Bob Uecker. And so I think Cub Nation, just send your condolences up north of 94 there. But hope springs eternal, Jeff. I'm hoping this is going to be the year. Fingers crossed. Who knows?
Yeah, I think, from someone who just kind of watched the content on Marquee, which is, kind of one of the purposes of having your own flagship station is to be able to kind of pick these things up. And yeah, I watched some of the panels and was able to look at, some of the nitty gritty of what was said by the front office. We had some podcasts this week, some media buzz up. It going into CubsCon this week, we had Jed Hoyer was on David Kaplan's podcast making some commentary, and then we saw Tom Ricketts start making his rounds on the media cycle. Yeah. I think it's tough. Owners are never going to be the good guys unless you're the guy running the Suns, who's giving family-friendly discounts on concession stands, or you're Steve Cohen, who uses his piggy bank as building his favorite fantasy team. But even after signing Juan Soto, I haven't really heard a ton about the Mets. But it is kind of weird, kind of like Jed Hoyer had talked about. There's a lot of offseason left for a certain number of players that are still talented, but there was a lot of activity early this year on some of the really big names, but now we're sitting here and we're just kind of struggling a little bit with getting things traction going and figuring out what the rest of the Cubs roster is going to look like. So that's that's a little frustrating, but I want to talk about specifically, and I hate to kind of harp on this, but Tom Ricketts' comments specifically, and he was on 670 Score, and his comment on Tom Ricketts said, for fans calling for Cubs to spend more, they think somehow we have all these dollars that the Dodgers have, or the Mets have, or the Yankees have, and we just keep it, which isn't true at all. What happens is we try to break even every year, and that's about it. Pat, what do you think of that statement?
Give me Tom's address. No,
yeah.
here's the gist of it. First of all, and it's unfortunate, but I'm not surprised by that comment. Tom has always been, and he's always said that he's been a diehard Cub fan, and I'll give him that. He grew up in Wrigleyville, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, he, with the TD Waterhouse and the trading companies from his family and everything, at the end of the day, he's a businessman. And the fact that he sits there and says that he wants to break even every year, number one, that questions how far does he want to push to the pennant? the other part of that comment saying that how they pocket all the money, it's always, and I know Cub Nation has said this, not just me, not just you, but a lot of people have said this, that, we've been nickel and diming this ball club on the field, but yet let's take a look around that neighborhood every stinking year. Every year there's improvements. Every year there's, new restaurants, new bars, new events, new whatever. And Jeff, I know you and I have talked about this on the side. It's not just 162 games a year. They've got Winter Wonderland. They've got concerts when they're on the road. They just got done with 2 college football games this year. So they're making money hand over fist. And for him to say that they're not pocketing and they're just trying to break even, I think is a slap in the face to all Cub fans out there. And I think it's also, unfortunately, I think it's going to trickle down to Jed Hoyer. I think Jed's going to be on the hot seat. I know I've been listening a lot to 670 The Score, and they've been pretty much saying that this is going to be a make or break. And I think that was a tall tale as far as, the Kyle Tucker deal. Going out and signing a guy. Granted, they tried to nickel and dime it and avoid arbitration at the 11th hour, but, to go out and sign a guy for 1 year, not knowing that you might not be able to sign an extension to him, maybe that shows a little something. But, yeah, I and I'll let you get your take on it, and I'll stop rambling, but I was very disappointed to hear Tom say something like that, especially when it's hope springs eternal. We've made a bunch of deals already. The division has gotten substantially weaker, and he goes and says something like that, says we're trying to break even. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm pretty frustrated by it too. And I saw the reaction all over Twitter. There's not a Cubs fan out there that's sitting there super excited about what Tom said. And yeah, I think Brandon Miller, he does the podcast with over at CHGO on the weekends. It's more of kind of a statistical focused podcast. And it's frustrating to look at that comment or hear that comment and just talk about the neighborhood. If we're talking about a TV deal that's not in the same situation as all these other like RSNs that are, disintegrating, if we're sitting here and the goal, they're breaking even based on what we potentially know, what we just know about the revenue stream, then there is a huge box on the balancing side of that ledger opposite of expenses or in expenses of the cut that they're taking from the team. And if they're only breaking even, there needs to be financial people fired because it's just not possible. The team has turned everything in that neighborhood into basically revenue generating units. They've turned like the side of Wrigley Field. They have a sports book, which supposedly they don't get a lot of the money of. I'm calling baloney. This is a family show, so we're not going to swear it immediately. Exactly. And then, I also, they spend the entire offseason hosting every Big Ten football team. They host hockey teams, NHL this year, and Big Ten hockey. They take concerts in, and they're not getting 100% of that, but they are selling concessions at all those, and we all know the markup on concessions. You can't buy it. And even at that basis, if they're breaking even, if you look at this team right now, they're significantly below the pay level they were last year, and we don't really have an explanation. There's no transparency to what's going on. And it is frustrating as an everyday fan because there really is no defense when you are the most expensive ticket in town and you're telling me that cost is what break even is. It's not. It's not. Don't tell me that. That is insulting your audience. And that is a really dangerous thing. And it's not the first time that Tom has come on the radio and shoved his foot so far down his mouth that all we could see was his knee or maybe just knee-high socks, depending on the time of the year. I just really struggle to look at that comment and think that that's even remotely acceptable to say out loud. So anywho, I guess, instead of beating to death Mr. Ricketts and talking about...
And here's the deal. At the end of the day, it's not going to change. So the players need to see that. The players need to hear what he's saying, and they got to outperform on the field. It's almost like, and again, I'm going back to a good old Bob Ueckerism. It's like the movie Major League when they find out the owners are just trying to nickel and dime it so she can move the team to Miami. That's what this team needs to do when they hear Ricketts saying all he wants to do is break even. Shove it down their
That's
throat.
weird. They can make a sequel to Major League about the Oakland A's.
Yeah, they could. Oh yeah.
But yeah, it is tough, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that there was a comment of like, "Do you enjoy being an owner to the Cubs?" And he said that he loves the Cubs, and it still like defines his off season and all these other things. And yeah, like that's great. I love that you love the Cubs. I love the Cubs too. But yeah, I think we need, as fans, you need to either open the books, which could be coming in 2027 as the labor deal expires then, and we're looking at potentially just tectonic movement in how the baseball's revenue might be distributed, how they might look at salary cap or salary floor, because I know people are frustrated with how the Dodgers are behaving, but they're not doing anything illegal. They've just assembled through trades and all these things and used a farm system and their money to bring like Shohei and all these stars there. And now they're the super team, which like good on them maximizing their Shohei Ohtani window. They know that he's in his prime right now. And yeah, I know that people are like, well, that's the best rotation ever assembled. But
and
Tyler
look what
Glasnow
got him. Ohtani's influence got him Sasaki.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, but Yamamoto got hurt last year. They won a World Series with like just kind of patched together pitching staff. So like, I mean, it tells you how deep they still are too. But yeah, I mean, pitching is at a premium in this era of baseball. So it's not that surprising to me. Like, they went and got Sasaki. I just think that, yeah, I think it's everybody knew this was happening months ago. So like, it feels like all the preamble and all the meetings and stuff were kind of a waste of time.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good place to kind of leave Mr. Ricketts, no matter how badly the Cubs want to leave Cub fans want to leave Mr. Ricketts in the dust. He is the owner of this team, and this is how things are going to operate. But in honor of Mr. Euchre, I was just watching Major League 2 recently, which is, I think it's a little underrated. I'm not saying it's a great movie, but I enjoy Major League 2. I also enjoy Major League Back to the Minors, which like I understand a lot of people do not like that movie, but a baseball movie is a baseball movie. But at the beginning of that movie, he does a recap and he says, "Look who's coming back." And I wanted to kind of set the stage for the rest of our conversation for this episode of where the Cubs are, what they've done so far, and then we can talk about what they still need to do as we are quickly approaching spring training. As you said, it's February 9th, and that's only about 21 days away. So where are we at? Well, this offseason so far, they have added Kyle Tucker, obviously the big prize of the offseason. He's going to add significant value to this lineup. Carson Kelly to back up Miguel Amaya, Matthew Boyd for the rotation, and joining him from the Guardians, Eli Morgan, who has a pretty interesting and powerful changeup, will be nice for the bullpen. Vidal Brujan, who is kind of a jack of all trades position-wise, but jack of nothing offensively. He's never really put together. He was a top prospect just as recently as like 3 or 4 years ago, but hasn't put together offensively, had a high contact rate. We've seen high contact rate prospects kind of fizzle out in the majors as if you're not getting quality of contact, you're not getting regular on base. Then we have Caleb Thielbar. He's a lefty. And then the Cubs got in the Rule 5 draft Gage Workman, who is, a little bit of more advanced bat, has been head raked in Double-A and plays third base. So, I mean, without assuming Matt Shaw is the third baseman, he's theoretically penciled as our starting third baseman in 2025. But yeah, it's tough to kind of look at that and think that the offseason is, like wrapped up and done. So yeah, I'm going to challenge you with this question. I've got some prepared thoughts based on that offseason, and let's talk about subtractions as well. Kyle Hendricks obviously has moved on to the Angels. I guess a mutual parting of ways, like his contract was up, he left. And I kind of argued at the time, as much as everybody knows how I'm a big Kyle Hendricks guy. My son's named after Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah, you are.
And but yeah, I think like my argument early in the offseason is if the Cubs re-signed him, then they didn't do what they were supposed to do this offseason. And I guess like I'm mildly concerned that Matthew Boyd and Colin Ray aren't exactly these huge upgrades to
No.
what Kyle Hendricks would provide to the rotation, and I have a concern about that. But yeah, Pat, if you look at, and then obviously Bellinger and Paredes are gone from this roster as well. So if you look at this team right now, the 2025 Cubs, what are the things you think they still need to do this offseason for you to feel a little more comfortable about them being able to compete for the division? What would be your first priority?
Well, I think honestly, the first priority I would still look at pitching, and to be honest, I think that they may be okay as far as starting is concerned. I know it's kind of piecemeal towards the back end of the rotation, but I do think that they got to shore up that bullpen. I mean, they really got to get some decent arms, especially a closer. Now, I know Tanner Scott was just signed, shockingly, by the Dodgers, who seems to get everybody. But in any event, I think we need to get a bona fide closer. As far as that's concerned, I think that should be priority number one. Now, priority number two is I still feel, even with the Kyle Tucker acquisition, I think that we still need a big bat still. I know, and it was funny, and I know you and I have talked about this live a few podcasts ago about how Wrigley Field factored into the 2024 season, meaning the weather, the wind, etc., and how pitching was phenomenal, or a lot better than it's been, but the hitting suffered from it. And the score was talking about that again the other day. The only problem is if you get a big bat, then it's like, okay, well, where are they going to go? All right. Now, I know a big topic over the weekend was from Craig Counsell saying that Suzuki is going to be our everyday DH. Now, granted, with injuries and whatnot, he'll be platooned out there in the outfield. But where are you going to put him? Now, again, being optimistic, I think, too, that, with the weather being that bad last year, again, optimism, hope springs eternal, that it won't be as bad this year. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more out of these bats. I think for some reason, I just got a gut feeling that I think Ian Happ's going to turn it up a little bit. I do think the injury to Dansby Swanson, and we saw that he had subsequent surgery on it. I think now that was bothering him all last year. I think he's going to come out of his funk. We saw that Nico Horner had a procedure done recently. So we don't know how long he was hurt. That could have affected, his hitting. So there was a lot of factors put into play. But like I said, I would look at bullpen being number one and maybe getting another decent hitter number two, and then kind of go from there. What do you think? How would you rank it?
Yeah, I think I'm right there, and I'm going to specifically point to third base. I'm just as excited about Matt Shaw as a lot of other people.
Yeah.
I think he could be a hell of a player. Had a really nice, numbers put together at AA Tennessee last year, and put some decent numbers up in his, shorter time at AAA. But I think the issue I have is how this offseason mirrors so much of last offseason and the offseason before, in which we are walking into spring training potentially with the same question marks we've had for several years. And those are the big three, where Kyle Tucker is a big bat, but we have to remember we subtracted Cody Bellinger. And yes, we've raised the ceiling of what that outfielder is, because we can, I guess, pencil him in as right field. We've raised the ceiling because of his past production, but we still I feel like we're missing a bat in that lineup, because if you go up and down, exactly what you say, Seiya Suzuki, when healthy, is a great offensive player, and he's probably going to have to adjust to being a DH a little bit. Ian Happ, when he's right, is a very solid offensive player. Dansby Swanson, when he's healthy, is a nice piece as part of a bigger puzzle. But I think walking into 2025, depending on a third baseman at Matt Shaw to produce major league quality at bats and major league quality defense immediately, depending on what we've seen this spring, there is no backup plan currently. There's not. We don't have. Right? Yeah, we have Gage Workman and Vidal Brujan are penciled in my mind as the alternatives at third base, and that's just not okay. No. That is, they need to get a bench bat, or slightly better than a bench bat, a platoon player that can play third base, because I'm extremely concerned that as much as everybody was pining for Christopher Morel in 2023, and he came up and he was on fire. And then last year, we kind of gave him the reins, but inappropriately did not prepare him really to play third base until later in spring training. And then he was just an awful third baseman, and
he was lost.
His numbers always were just kind of, well, like, if this goes right, like he's got a lot of bad luck in there, which he did, like, but offensively, he was a big black hole in the lineup. And I'm just worried about that happening again. And then the other two things, back end relief help, which the Cubs still have time. There's still guys in the market. There's a lot of guys that they've been tied to that will bring that. And then a front end piece to the rotation. And I'll go a step further. And I know I said only three things, but average velocity of this rotation and their approach, like the K rate of this group is low, which just brings up so much opportunity for the ball in play to move the needle in these games. So I really wanted them to focus on getting swing and miss stuff in this offseason. And usually that's tied to velocity, not always, but usually. And they just haven't done that either. So we're staring down the barrel of another season in which we still have these three same problems we've been talking about for years. And it's frustrating because we've heard rumblings of discussions with Seattle, or discussions obviously they were talking about Jesus Luzardo, and that didn't work out. And I was a little hesitant just given, his injury history, but it just was very frustrating. It's very frustrating
too. Yeah. I don't want to
correct.
Yeah.
Which I think that's, to me, if you have Matt Shaw as a potential Nico Horner replacement, but you have a better bat at third base because of it, I think I feel very differently, because I think that Matt Shaw, not the same defensive ability, but could replicate Nico's contributions to the offense. But having Nico and Matt Shaw, I'm a little concerned because there's just not there's not a second big thumper in this lineup still. And I know there's been some moments where Bregman has been mentioned, but given his, qualifying offer attachment, I don't see it happening.
And he wants subsequential years too. The Cubs won't do that.
Correct. So
the one thing that also scares me, you bringing up Matt Shaw, and we're, again, and I keep saying this line over and over and over, hope springs eternal. We're bringing up Matt Shaw. He's going to be the big bopper. How about we bring up the name Matt Mervis? We thought the same thing about him, and he came up and he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. I mean, that's what makes me nervous. Matt Shaw, great player. There is no ceiling on his potential, but it scares me that we're putting all of our eggs in a basket of a kid who, hasn't even gone to 1060 West Addison yet. But
and I think that it's definitely a little different. I see your point with Matt Mervis. Matt Mervis was kind of those late round signing 2020, not enough rounds in the draft, and was a two-way player, and then decided to be a full-time hitter, and he just had that monstrous season in 2022, I believe it was, and everybody was itching for this guy to get up to the majors in 2023. But even then they signed Hosmer and Trey Mancini and all this insurance so that he would have to beat down the door to get called up, and injuries and underperformance got him called up, and then he underperformed. Right now we don't have the underperformance backup plan. We just have Matt Shaw, which awesome. I really am excited to see this kid play, but I'm also terrified to just hand him the reins, because if you're competing for divisions, that is not a strategy. That's just not, it's not a good strategy. But that seems to be the NL Central way right now. It's hey, we've got 2/3 the puzzle, but that 1/3 part is such a freaking disaster that maybe we're in it and we'll address it at the trade deadline. But if we're not, we knew that 1/3 was gonna sink the whole ship, and it ended up doing it. And for the Cubs, the last 2 years in May, it's been the bullpen. Last years in May, 11 and 18. Last 2 years, both years. That's nuts. It's they're 22 and 36 in May in 2022 and 2023. Literally all they have to do is get closer to 500 in May, and they're in the playoffs both of those seasons.
Both of those years, yeah,
it's nuts. It's just absolutely mind-blowing to me. But I think I want to talk about two guys specifically. There's two guys that I've really just kind of honed in on for the back end of the bullpen, and they're both older, and I think they're going to take potentially short-term deals. We'll see. But but one of them is Kenley Jansen. I've always been a big Kenley Jansen fan just because, he's got solid velocity, but he is a little bit of that Mariano Rivera build of like, the cutter's coming, like, and people still can't hit it. And he's done it so well for so long. He's 37, obviously, like he's still doing it, which is really cool. And yeah, his K rate is still, in the 84th percentile in the majors last year. He's got 447 career saves. His whip is still about 1.06. In the last 3 years, like he's just been around 30 saves, thrown about 60 to 50 to 60 innings, and about a K rate that is way higher than a strikeout per inning, and it's just done his job. Like, I would not mind the Cubs giving this guy money to be their closer. And then, that gives some buffer, in my opinion, to, to sign or to have Porter Hodge if they need him for high leverage. Like I have no issue with Porter Hodge. I just have a little bit of, PTSD of the Keegan Thompson offseason. And the Keegan Thompson, Brandon Hughes offseason, where like we were like, we're set. We have Keegan Thompson and Brandon Hughes. Like they're going to take the last 3 innings of every game. They're nasty, which they were. They were going into 2023. Brandon Hughes got a knee injury and has never really been healthy since. Keegan Thompson, like, has not been right since. Like, you can't, bullpen is so volatile. Like, you just got to, like, you're literally throwing gum at a wall and whatever sticks. Like, you're either in Seattle and there's a ton of gum on the wall, like their famous gum wall, or all the gum falls on the ground as other people's shoes and you lose 18 games in May. So, what do you think? Kenley Jansen, is that a name that like piques your interest, or is that?
I think so. I mean, here's the deal. I kind of look at the Kenley Jansen thing as, and people are probably going to add to this, but like the Bears head coaching search. The Bears are looking for a guy who's been a proven winner that has been there before. And let's look at Kenley Jansen. He has. Yeah, he's getting up there in age. But look at what he has done consistently over and over and over with the Dodgers, with the Red Sox. I mean, which, by the way, thanks for putting that clip on there. Anytime you see a player get struck out, it just kind of brightens my day. But in any event, but yeah, I would definitely go after Kenley Jansen. I mean, I would. And here's the other thing, and this would be right up Ricketts' alley. If, let's say, he were to be available based upon his age, years of service, etc., who knows? He may be on the cheap compared to a lot of what these other high-level late relievers / closers are commanding right now in the open market. So you might be able to get him a little bit cheaper. And I do have one more name to throw out at you, but I'll let you continue.
Yeah, I think the other name that I'm going to throw out is Kirby Yates. Very similar situation. My only hesitancy with Kirby Yates is his out pitch is a splitter. Like, he has a fastball that isn't elite level speed. It sits around 93 miles per hour, but his splitter has really, really high value. It's got a little bit more drop than the average splitter in Major League Baseball, and it's got a little bit of a like third base side run, so it comes in a little bit on righties, and then lefties it moves away from. So maybe that's where he gets a lot of his value. It's the exception there. He's got a little bit of a high walk rate, and it's probably when the splitter is not good, people sit on it. It reminds me very much of Mark Leiter Jr., where like when Mark Leiter was in, like was when he was really in, he was great. But like when he was not working, holy crap, was it bad? It was just like it was survival. Correct. So he's another 37-year-old. Believe it or not, he went to a high school in Hawaii, which is kind of cool. I don't see that like pop up as a place a player went, but yeah, 37 years old. He had 33 saves. The difference between him and Jansen is that Kirby Yates did have like some injury plagued years and not so great numbers in 2022 and 2023, just not as like consistent as I seen even at the 37-year age. So I just curious what the injury is. Need to look back and see what it was. And trying to figure out how much this guy has left in the tank. So, but this is another guy that I feel like could really fit the mold for the Cubs in the back end of the bullpen.
And due to those injuries, again, just like Jansen, the Cubs could probably get him on the cheap. The other name,
the Ivy, Nick Erickson says that if they got Kenley Jansen and another mid reliever, he would feel way more comfortable.
I hear you, buddy. I agree with you 100%, pal. Here's another name, and I have been seeing this so much on social media. I've heard it from so many Cub fans. So I just want to get your take on this. Trevor Bauer.
Oh, God.
He's out there right now. I know, but he's out there right now and said that he will pitch for the league minimum. And he put up some phenomenal numbers last year in whatever league he was in. And I've seen so many things on social media that the Cubs should go after him, and people, talking to Cub fans and everything else. What is your take on it? I know the guy's a head case, but he's still got an arm, and it would be dirt cheap too.
I think the proof is in the pudding, maybe a little bit on this one. He is going to play for dirt cheap, and no one's knocking the door. So then it makes you wonder how much of the head case, like what don't we know?
Yeah.
Like I understand that, there's been things settled out of court. There's been things that, I'm not going to drag the guy through the mud. He does that very well himself, but he definitely has rubbed folks the wrong way. He was making those videos about the sticky stuff and like basically exposing everyone in the league and saying how he also was able to use sticky stuff to manipulate his stuff. And like, I wonder if like he's just being punished for Major League Baseball, of like calling them out on this, or like the guy has just an atrocious track record with women. Atrocious. And either adjudicate or not adjudicate. Yeah. I think like, I don't care about the talent. I already had to like kind of swallow my pride and concern with who Aroldis Chapman was as a person when the Cubs got him. It was one of those things where like there were 6 other teams at that deadline trying to acquire him, and he was the piece that team needed. And it's like, I guess, you'll swallow your morals a little bit for a World Series championship, and like I don't have to love the guy. But yeah, he doesn't have the same problematic past, but he doesn't have a great past either. Aroldis Chapman is probably not the world's ideal human being, but yeah, like I think that in this situation, if you can choose not to bring that in there's just too many factors of like, if this team has galvanized really well, if they get along, I don't want to throw in one of the most unpredictable unknown wild cards and that ego into a
clubhouse
group,
cancer. I get you.
So like, he's like, I think I would audition for the Cubs back end of the bullpen or rotation and knowing how poorly that would go long before I would be comfortable with Trevor Bauer on this team. And
like I said, I just keep hearing about it so dang much that I mean, just the validity of all of it. And honestly, my opinion, it's not going to happen. He's not going to get, unless you get some desperate small market team that wants to sell tickets. That might be it. But yeah, I don't ever see it happening here. But so many people are complaining that Ricketts should go after him. And yeah, I agree with you. I think it would be definitively, he might still have an arm, but I think the clubhouse cancer would outweigh what his arm has left in the tank.
Yeah. He might have an arm, but the problem is he still has a mouth. So like that is the issue. Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's Chris Storm is saying if Tampa's selling off pieces, Pete Fairbanks. Yeah, I like the idea of that as well, Chris. Chris Storm is our social media manager for a few of our accounts over at Bricks Behind the Ivy. First of all, thanks for watching. Second of all, thanks for putting comments. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them on here. But I think that does it for our live stream, and this will be our general audio episode as well. If you watch tonight, make sure you're subscribing on YouTube. If you have more thoughts on what you think the Cubs should be doing this offseason or what they should be doing with the rest of their offseason, make sure you leave some thoughts in the comments, and we'll get back to you and we'll talk about it. But hey, any closing thoughts, Pat, on where you're at with the Cubs or anything you got going on?
No, I mean, like I said, just hopeful this season. Hopeful that we're going to turn this thing around. Hopeful that the Wrigley weather is going to be friendly to us this year, and will be indeed the friendly confines once again. We just thank everybody for tuning in and watching, and like Jeff was saying, leave comments below and get a hold of us. We'll bring up your comments on future episodes, and we've got some things in the hopper that we're looking at doing. We're kind of kicking around the idea about doing an opening day type thing. Harry might be showing up. We don't know. I never know what the heck he's doing.
Yes.
But yeah, so we'll see what he's doing right now. I think he's down in Arizona right now, probably bothering Lord knows who. But in any event, but yeah, we just thank you very much. Subscribe. And we couldn't do this without you guys. We really, really couldn't. Cub Nation is a strong nation, and devoted and devout fans. And as Harry would say, the Cubbies will thrive in 25. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and I think if you haven't noticed, and we'll have more information on what this is soon, but we have become part of the Bleacher Bunch, and we have more details as that goes on, and what that is and what that means for 2025, as we look at kind of consolidating with a few other fan-run podcasts, kind of just be a large Cub fan content created network, so that you're getting all of your Cubs content from different voices, from other Cub fans in the space. Instead of us fighting over the same fish in the pond, why don't you come to one place, get several different types of shows, from really analytical shows like Mike Waller's great Cubs PS Plus, to kind of like a talk show and just kind of a venting session of the new old Sunranto show, now called Bleacher Bunch, which is a live interactive show in which you can come on and kind of vent and talk about the Cubs. So a Cup of Cubby Blue, Baseball Rabbit Hole with Mike Cotton, a bunch of these shows are coming together. And I'm working on a new show called Beyond the Ivy, which will be a national baseball show. So we can talk about teams outside of the Chicago area and get you all caught up on what's going on in the rest of Major League Baseball, just in case you're just way too focused on Clark and Addison, much like most of us are.
Yeah.
But I do want to make one more point. I lied. I always have to kind of look at some of the numbers, and it's a little bit of a situation where I just love using my calculator. And well, I wanted to look at talking about the Cubs pitching. So the average Major League Baseball team, here we go. Everybody strap in and get that extra cup of coffee, Yaggy Road coffee.
Seatbelts on. Hit me with it.
So the average Major League team last year needed 1,450 innings from their pitching staff. And the Cubs got about 890 innings out of their starting pitching, which means that they're about 600 innings from their bullpen. Currently, how this team is constructed, I'm very concerned about them being able to get 800 innings from their starting staff, because Boyd and Colin Ray have not been these long inning eaters. The Cubs really do need to extend their rotation depth a little bit more with maybe one more arm. I thought they look for in a trade. And if you think about bullpen mileage being a huge factor on how a major league team performs, this to me is the most interesting thing about innings pitched. And this, I'll leave this to you, and you can leave a comment on whether or not you think this matters. But the team with the highest bullpen usage or starting pitching innings usage last year was the Seattle Mariners, which understandably they have 5 workhorses there. They had 942. So they had way less innings than most folks to cover with their bullpen. But the team that had the least innings covered by their starters last year, in the top, the 6 least innings covered by starting pitchers, LA Dodgers, which does not surprise me based on their injuries, but they won the World Series. And that's why they're loading up on starters right now, is because that starting staff disintegrated last year, and they had to use an opener in the World Series. And then another local friend, the Milwaukee Brewers, are right under them. They only had 794 innings covered by starters, and they had a lot of injuries. And I think that's why a lot of folks are saying that, the Brewers might finally be down because they're bringing back, if Woodruff is going to be healthy and potentially part of that rotation at some point, but Devin Williams is gone. How are they going to piece together the end of the year? But I do want to answer Josh Kuffler's. I hope I'm saying your name right. Question: Cade Horton, I would expect, if he's healthy, is going to have to take some innings this year for the Major League Club, because right now I'm looking at the rotation depth as Justin Steele, Shota Mignaga, Jamison Tyone, Colin Ray, Matthew Boyd, Javier Assad, Ben Brown, and then Cade Horton, I think, is right up behind there.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we got Birdsell in there as well, but I'd really like to get one more major league guy for that rotation.
Oh, yeah. Solidify. Absolutely.
Well, now that I'm done nerding out a little bit, I think that is a good place to leave Bricks Behind the Ivy this week. Do you have any actual final thoughts, or are you good with where it's at?
No, I'm good with where it's at. Like I said, thanks again for all tuning in. We got some exciting stuff in the hopper, folks, so that's why you got to subscribe. Get on the bus. Cubbies are coming, and we'll see you out at the old ball yard.
Subscribing on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave a review, leave comments. Every one of those help get us found on the algorithm. Thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Good night. Hope you had fun at CubsCon, and go Cubs.
I'll even give you the Sammy. Cheers.